this is an unwise question to ask, and it's this right here. Am I at peace with it?
Well, because our emotions come from a heart that can deceive us, our emotions should never lead us.
I think it's when we allow our feelings to lead our decisions instead of God's truth, instead of his scripture and his will, it leads us to make foolish decisions which end up in regret. And that's why I love what Paul's guidance is. That's why don't be foolish. Don't be unwise. Don't make choices you're going to regret. And the way to do that is understand what the Lord's will is. When God asks us to follow his will, and it costs us. It costs us our dreams. It costs us our plans. And it costs what we want. Because he was at peace with in his relationship with his Father, Jesus endured suffering knowing it was God's will. And when we rest in that same peace that Jesus gives us, because Jesus came to bring us peace with God, we can have this certainty that if we trust in God's will, that if you trust in God's will, there is an outcome. There is an outcome that you don't see, but Jesus foresaw. He saw it ahead of time. And I love what Hebrews 12 says. He says, therefore, since we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders us and the sin that so easily entangles us. And let us run with perseverance the race that is marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. And we can't stop there. We fix our eyes on Jesus, because he knew something was on the other side of God's will. Even though he wasn't at peace with the cost, he knew what was on the other side of God's will. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him, the writer says. Consider Jesus, who endured such opposition from sinners so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. There is joy. On the other side of the cost, it may not be what you want right now, but we can tell you that on the other side of following God's will, on the other side of that, you may not be at peace with it now, but there is joy on the other side. And you may not be at peace with it, but there's joy in store for you when you obey God's will. Even if you have to give up what you want right now. Fix your eyes on him. Obey his will. And this is the big idea we want to leave you with today. That when you obey God's will, you can trust that you will have joy even when you're not at peace with the cost. You can trust that. Jesus is proof of that. And Cass and I, every once in a while, we'll talk about South Africa. It's a part of our story. We'll look at each other. We'll look at each other. We'll ask a question. Any regrets?
No regrets.
No. Because when you follow God's will, you will have no regrets.